you can just paint from a place of queer joy. You can create from a place of fear, or whatever it is, the thing that makes you happy or comes from a place of love. I think that's the one thing I have learned in creating art, is it has to really come from here, because otherwise
Yeah.
I get bored and I don't want to do
Yeah.
it. It's like, oh, I gotta paint this barn. I don't want to paint that. you know, I just want to,
100%.
yeah, I want to paint things that I love, and I want to bring people together, or to
Mhm.
share something that makes people see something that I don't even see in it.
Welcome back to Graphic Content, the podcast where we talk all things who, why, and the what the moments along the way. I'm your host, Gio, and what's on brand for me this week is being fully depressed coming back from Thailand to the cold. Today, my guest is Johnnie Ingram, a Peabody Television Academy, two-time Critics' Choice, three-time GLAAD award-winning co-creator and executive producer of the four-time Emmy-winning series We're Here on HBO. Mouthful, I'm getting it right.
That was good. I'm impressed. I haven't even said it out loud, so I can.
It's good to hear it back, though, right?
Oh, it is. I mean, I'm sort of reaching, I guess, midlife, so it's nice to hear I've done something, contributed something, and it feels really good, for
You've
sure.
done a lot. As somebody who is aiming to get to a level where I feel like I'm actually contributing in a bigger way than just, work, you're doing great, sweetie.
Thank you. I know the world's moved fast, and sometimes you can't even keep up with all the wonderful things I've been able to do, and so it is nice to have these moments to sit with them and appreciate them.
I love to hear that. But I'm going to keep going because I still have more to say for your
Okay,
intro.
well, let's do it.
He's the co-creator and executive producer of the Critics' Choice and GLAAD nominated doc series Swiping America. He's a fine artist, advocate, writer, producer, and director who has led many award-winning advertising campaigns and is most known for the New York Times, Time, and USA Today acclaimed Cheerios Super Bowl commercial featuring an interracial family in 2013. Lately, he's reconnected with his artistic roots as a painter, exploring narratives through human perspectives. Welcome to Graphic Content, Johnnie Ingram.
I didn't realize you weren't done.
yeah, that's
I
done.
thought
We're over.
I thought I thought it was a full stop, so I had to do a little something more for the second intro.
The jazz hands. So, how are you?
We're surviving here in the U.S. as
Mhm.
best I can say, taking it a day at a time. It's not been great, but I think I am focusing on more of a smaller life lately, and reconnecting mostly with my friends and colleagues, and in that part of the world which I live is wonderful. So I've been able to escape some of the insanity by focusing on the communities that we currently live in, and contributing there.
As somebody who is going through my own little, let's say, like transformation personally and within my career, I feel like the most connected I feel to my life and to myself is when I am actually like thinking a bit more micro versus macro, if that makes any sense.
Yes, completely. I mean, it's hard to ignore the macro, and I'm not, but I had to be, I think, in most choiceful in how much attention I give it.
Yeah. To absorb as much information as we are thrown on a daily basis, like our brains cannot compute. And that's why like everybody is going through this phase of life where there's such overwhelm, and I can't absorb every message, every trauma, every negative thing that's happening in the world because it's not conducive to me being helpful to others, if that makes any sense.
No, completely. I mean, it's been. I mean, I'm lucky. I think I was born at a time when we didn't have technology, so I do remember being bored and what that feels like, and really discovering the world. Literally one step at a time. Clearly, once technology boomed, I was always obsessed with computers
Hmm.
and design and technology, and how it can help humanity, and definitely was led to my career through that lens. But I think, it has been an interesting and a really great. I have a lot of appreciation for life without it as well. And I think
Mhm.
that's been the contrast recently that I've been really pursuing the high highs and and really just going back to the ground, which is I love I love the ground. And I think it's just a lot to learn on the ground, and I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. I am like in similar situation as you, like as you're saying, going back to basics. Even when I was on vacation, like my friend who I met up with, she brought her painting supplies. Like she brought paper and watercolors, and we just sat by the beach and painted. I felt so alive, as cheesy as that sounds. I was like, this is how I started. I was that creative kid, went into graphic design, got my degree. I think we have similar
Same, exactly the
trajectories, right?
same. Yes, yeah.
Yes. And so, now I'm like, reconnecting with it. I thought it was the perfect timing with this recording with you because of what you had put in your intake form. And so the early days of you as a creative, like what did that look like? Like where did your path start?
Well, I have a very long story, but I guess we have a little bit of time. But
We
I
got
mean,
time.
I was born and raised in, I would say, backwoods Appalachia. For those of you who don't know, East Tennessee. I was born near Dollywood. That's sort of the biggest point of reference.
I've been there.
Yeah, well, it's fun. I took a lot of my Canadian friends to Dollywood, and they had a blast. And Dollywood in particular is this really cute little bubble of, like, Dolly Parton, who was like mother, and it's
Queen.
wonderful. And but however, growing up wasn't the easiest in a small town in Appalachia. In particular, even pursuing the arts isn't necessarily, I guess, in most places, unless you're lucky enough to be born in a large city, there's not a lot of resources for the arts programs or the arts community in these small towns. But I was, I think, very fortunate to have and connect to my public school art teachers who were really wonderful. And from my, I mean, I think we're all creative. I think we're all born creative, and we're all
100%.
have the ability to be creative, no matter if you're a finance bro or I think a lot of people just quickly dismiss their creativity as I'm not good, and I think that can hinder someone's step into their creativity or their creative self. And I think in life we all are on some journey. Sometimes people find their creative self later,
Yeah.
or they, like myself, really started as a drawing and painting, and then moved into pursuing a career in design. But where it all started was, pencil, paper, and I have like my mother encouraged me to draw and paint, so that really helped. There's drawings and of barns, and not that I didn't like drawing barns, and everybody wanted me to draw all these damn barns, and it's so I drew them. It was good practice, but it was, very much the thing that, in Tennessee was like, oh, people love barns. If you paint these barns, maybe you can have a career in barn painting. But that wasn't necessarily what I wanted to do.
Mhm.
But I was lucky enough in public school to have some really amazing art instructors that exposed me to art culture and different mediums, and it was just I lived for those classes. And yeah, I was lucky. I actually was good in math and biology, and I really, and I really enjoyed learning and absorbing the world. But it was always the reflection of how I could speak through pictures and drawing and emotion, and that's just all. It's always been inside me, and it was never a question. So, and I remember one of my very first memories of art life and queer life was when I watched a documentary on Keith Haring in my art school in small town
Wow.
backwoods Appalachia, and I was just this light just went off. I was like, "That's me. That's what I want to do. I want to connect with people. I want to, I think art has the ability to connect with the masses." And I thought Keith in particular, and Andy Warhol, and the whole pop art movement was the ability to, take what was at one point the art world was only for the rich, and
Mhm.
really grounded in bringing it to the people. And I think that's just been so inspiring for my entire life. I always connected from that moment with, okay, I know what I want to do. I don't know how to get there, but I'm gonna somehow figure it out. And it was challenging growing up in high school and had some, a lot of really great stories to tell about that experience. And
Hmm.
I found I was art club president in high school, and so I found my little like click after being forced at some point to play football. So I definitely did a lot of things that society was trying to push me towards, but I quickly knew I was like, "This, I don't really want to do this. I want to do this."
Yeah, you're like, no,
And
girl.
so yeah, so football, no. Art club president, yes.
Hmm. So I got to go back a bit. So you talked about the barns, having that as like a subject matter. What was something that you gravitated towards? Like when if you were just gonna sit down and draw something, what was like your go to?
When I was a young kid, this is fine. I would draw Bart Simpson like all the time. I know this was more illustration than it is fine art, but I didn't know the difference. I just knew I just was obsessed with Bart Simpson, and I have a Bart Simpson cake. I was like I would always draw Bart Simpson, so that was sort of me trying, I think, to connect culture and pop culture
Hmm.
specifically, which I quickly became obsessed with, and I just was intrigued by how you could develop characters and narratives through drawing and illustration. That said, I think that was my rebellion from feeling like I have to draw landscape barns and that sort of thing. And I'm not saying I'm not done with painting barns. I actually potentially may have a piece that could bring that to life, but it's going to take a different narrative spin, to connect with that sort of storyline that I've had across my life. I was really interested in leaving
Hmm.
Tennessee, and I think I really wanted to think about well, it was more than just what am I going to draw, but what can I draw or create that will get me a job so that I can get money to leave
Hmm.
here. So that's when I just came across graphic design, which at the time was an emerging industry. It had been around, but I think it was clearly just starting to boom, and I think everyone,
100.
so many graphic designers and design schools, and that navigating that was also very interesting. But I think that was when I set my eyes on art school. It
Hmm.
was important to find one that is. So I moved to Chicago and went to Columbia College in Chicago.
You and I have like very similar stories. It's actually really crazy. Like I'm sitting here listening and I'm like, small town, obsessed with pop culture when it comes to subject matter.
I
Like,
mean,
and
I'm
then
gay, so that maybe I don't know if it's like that's part of my DNA. I don't know.
It really is. But and then like going to Toronto design school, like to me, that was like my only option. I considered law school for like a minute because I can't shut the fuck up. And then I was like,
Well,
I think I need to go to design school. Like this makes the most sense. You describing even the inspiration with like New York club culture and like art, like that era for me it was Andy Warhol, but post where it was more like the club kid era. That
mhm.
was that thing that was like that really drew me to that cross section of queer and art.
I'm in New York. One of my exes was really into club culture, so I got to really learn a lot about that through him. And my current partner is a lawyer, so good to have a lawyer as a partner. I will say that for sure.
Especially in your industry when you're working on like really big projects.
Yes, yes, exactly. He's also my creative partner. So we created the show. We're here together, and he's an advocate and was co-chair of GLAD, it's an organization for media, queer stories and media, and yeah, he's co-chair for 10 years. So we have similar backgrounds, and in some ways, a bit of a gay agenda, to educate and to tell meaningful stories about
Mhm.
the queer experience. But I really loved. I was so lucky to go to art school. I mean, I studied graphic design, and I ended up working in advertising, which was not really what I was planning. When I was finally finished with college, I did an internship at a publication, and I really didn't like being the graphic designer at a publication because I just felt the editors had all this power, and I just felt like this little pond they were pushing over, and I was just like, oof. I mean, I loved publication design. When I, of course, was making my own publications, I had all the creative call, and I just was like, well, this is. I have no power here. It's all the editors coming in, telling me, pushing me around, telling me what to do. So I was just like, hey, maybe second guess in particular, that I really wanted to pursue publication design. So
Mm-hmm.
I went to our counselor. We had a really great conversation about, well, what do you like about publication design? I was like, covers. And I was like, of course, so he's like, what? Well, I don't know if this is quite right for you, but would you consider looking at? There is this internship at Leo Burnett, which is a really giant ad agency in Chicago, and I was like, yeah, sure. So I went in and I interviewed for this internship where I guess it was like 180 kids trying to get this internship. Most of them studied advertising and wanted to be in advertising, and I got the position, which was shocking because I wasn't even really, I didn't think I was that qualified, but I think my portfolio that I built from that time was really based on real work, and it was executed well. I think at the time when there was a lot of these art directors that were coming out of school that couldn't execute, and it was at the time when I, as a designer, I could come up if I could come up with the idea
Mm-hmm.
and I could execute it. I was actually had a bit of a step forward from the other students that were vying for that job. So my first job was, or internship was, and first job was at Leo Burnett in Chicago, working on the Philip Morris account.
Okay.
So I don't know if it was like I didn't sell my soul because I think it was an intern position, but it was a very unique experience. And what I really liked about it was that I was instantly in pop culture. And if Andy Warhol did work, in the biz for a bit.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought there was kind of this trajectory to be and change the ad world because I felt, there's so much bad advertising out there. How do you make it better? And that it really took off from there. I really had a lot of success in advertising. I ended up moving from Chicago to Toronto for love, and uh, and I love Toronto. And I ended up working at Leo Burnett in Toronto, and then eventually moving to a place called Taxi, which is no longer, but was
Yeah.
at the time one of the hottest advertising agencies and design shops in Canada. And that's honestly all my closest friends that I still to this day hang out with are from that era of my advertising career, and we're still close friends. We all just had such a great experience working on some of the really amazing brands, and I loved the community, and it was really hard. I had to really teach myself how to be conceptual and how to be really fast and how to pivot. And just that was just a skill set that I didn't have inherently. I really had to push myself to learn how to make compelling advertisements. And actually, it was at Leo Burnett, Chicago, where I made my first controversial campaign. But I had this opportunity come up. It was called the AIDS Committee of Toronto. They are not for profit, but it is at a time when HIV was still on the rise, and they were really struggling connecting to the youth of Toronto because all they had were these like lame brochures that tells you how to practice safer sex at the time, and it was pretty boring. They had no money, and they were asking for yet another updated brochure that could connect with youth culture.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just sort of like, thinking back to Keith Haring and how he connected to youth culture. I was like, I don't know if brochure is going to get this done.
Yeah, let's be real.
We ended up convincing them to say, okay, well, we would love to do this more of a campaign. So we did a poster and a deck of cards, which I actually found for this, which is a little deck of cards that says "Sex from A to Z." And you see its little band, rubber band that's covering up this little
That's so
cartoon image of
cute.
this little zebra, and each card basically from there's A to Z. See, I said Z, so I lived in Toronto, I know, and each card has like a little illustration on it with a letter, and then on the back it says some kind of like, it was like Urban Dictionary is big back in then, but some like really urban, dictionary-esque like sexual act that was honestly mostly absurd, but it
Mhm.
says, what the sexual act was and then how to practice it safely. Or if it was just a generally unsafe act to practice. So it was a very successful campaign because what we noticed is instead of it was a brochure that someone would pick up at a testing
Clinic?
facility or clinic, and they would pass these out at the clubs, and they would have them literally. I would have a date with someone, and I would see this deck of cards on their coffee table or next to their bedside, or just as a fun thing to keep. It was a huge success. However, in that success, I guess it was a gentleman on the board of the AIDS Committee of Toronto that quit because he thought that this campaign was teaching kids how to be promiscuous and do like absurd sexual acts, and in fact it was doing just the opposite. But it was on the front page of the Globe and Mail, and I had like this rush of people from the ad agency I was working at, Leo Burnett, rush into my office and say, whoa, whoa, don't answer the phone, don't talk to the press. It was
Oh,
like this. At the time, it felt like a big ordeal, big controversy, and I was like energized by that. I was like, oh, I can't believe this made such a big impact. Obviously, I always wanted to do it, and really know how he did it, and I think after that moment, I was kind of got a little addicted to that feeling. But the strange part of it all is like for me, it wasn't controversial. It was just it was a way to connect with other humans. And it was about saving lives.
so when you say you got addicted to that feeling, like how has that pushed you forward in your career? You know, the whole idea around controversy, like what does that mean for you now since that was your like initial, let's say, touch point with it in like a bigger way? And how have you used that as like a theme throughout your career?
Controversy for the sake of being controversial, I think, isn't the great thing. And in particular, I think we were at I would say, a controversial competition in
Yeah.
order to get attention. And I think that's where we're learning quickly that controversy isn't always the place. It isn't always the thing that will get you. It'll get you noticed, but
Hmm.
will it get you noticed for the right reasons? I
Yeah.
find even in social media, being on set with We're Here in particular, the drag performers, at a time when drag was just becoming more part of pop culture instead of a club or subculture.
Hmm.
And I could see these queens competing with each other versus lifting each other up, and there
Right.
was just a lot of stuff. I was just sort of questioning, are we getting a little out of control of the attention seeking nature just to get noticed or get likes or to achieve a social media following, and you're losing your heart.
Hmm.
And so I think there was sort of that for me is the fine line. My controversial contributions are actually more just reflections of my life experience, and in particular a lot of people's life experience that just hasn't necessarily made the mainstream. And I think that has now become in some ways very extreme, as we can see with the United States and just the
Yeah.
political environment that we're in, and people will say anything to get a headline. And then that's probably a little bit why I've become a little smaller
Hmm.
in my practice, but or choosing to pursue a smaller practice. I think there is a good controversy and there's a selfish controversy.
Mhm.
Um,
100%. I'm in the early stages of this process. Like this is officially now season two for me, and still,
Congrats! It's
thank you.
fun. Yeah.
It's very fun. Like I'm building something from the ground up. It's 100% me. I'm able to connect with so many people. But one of the things that, we live in a world where like viral content is so at like the thing, right?
Mhm.
And I'm going through this process and I'm like, I don't really care. Like if it happens, great. And I had somebody give me like feedback that was like, you should talk more about like hot button issues or, have those clips that are going to have more clicks or whatever. And I was like, that just seems so inauthentic to me. Like I don't want to talk necessarily about something that's like outside of what the purpose of these conversations are, right? And to me I'm like, I just want to keep it going that way and not go something that make, like you said, for the sake of engagement. And I'm like, because then it's like, what am I, then it just doesn't seem authentic to me, and like, what are we doing, right?
Well, I mean, in loving pop culture, which we both love pop culture. We established that. To be a part of pop culture is to get noticed, and
Yes.
but what are you getting noticed for? If you look at pop
Mhm.
art and going back to the heart of the resistance in particular, it wasn't initially about HIV and awareness, but I think there was a after establishing after Keith established his identity and ability to connect to the ground with his artwork, which is literally like chalk and subway.
Mhm.
Um, then using that language that he created to to give back to the community to me is like exactly why you would make pop art. And that's and there's DNA and we're here. There's DNA in these deck of cards of that. I mean, it's that pursuit of a better community for humanity,
Mhm.
not a selfish, I just want to get clicks and likes and
100.
for the sake of being popular. I think we've lost our way.
I keep saying this over and over again. Like, I genuinely love having conversations with people about the things that make them passionate, like point blank, like baseline why I'm doing this. Obviously, there's layers to this where like I would love for this to be something that would market me and my business,
Hmm.
but at the same time, I'm like there are so many amazing stories, and so for you, we've talked around this a little bit, but when it comes to storytelling, the reason that you and I connected in the first place was because of We're Here. That
Hmm.
was something that I connected with through COVID. And specifically Akila,
Yes,
she did see an episode on season one, and we've become very good friends. And
Akila's
so
amazing.
she's amazing. Hi, girl.
So yes, hi Akila,
We
we
love
love you, we
you.
miss you. Yeah.
Yes, I actually just chatted with her the other day
Oh,
over. We
good.
send voice notes, like not all the time, but like I'd say maybe once every other month. And she has become somebody that like I cannot wait to meet in person. Like we've
I
been
know I wanted to
internet.
wear my Aquila T-shirt, but we're currently actually we're moving, so I have a lot of my all my T-shirt collection is in storage. So unfortunately, you get stuck with this lousy linen thing.
It's okay, but I gotta say, when you posted that picture on your Instagram, I
Mm.
was like little, the inner child of like Geo growing up in cornfields out in the county, seeing, in my eyes, I'm like this like big time producer for HBO wearing my design. I was like,
Oh,
oh my
jeez.
god, like no, I know, but like I'm just saying, like for me, that was a moment I was like, I went to my boyfriend, I'm like, what the I was like, "This is amazing." So, like, thank you so much. The fact that you
No,
guys were
well,
on set was so cool.
the great thing for us is I think it is that connecting again, creating art that connects to other people, that moves other people emotionally, that maybe opens your eyes or inspires you to help someone who's struggling to exist. I mean, it's become so horrible for trans people in the United
Yeah.
States. I mean, even since we made that show or that episode in particular, which wasn't great then.
Yeah.
And I think our only hope is to inspire people like you to 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 want to help,
Yeah.
to really see, yeah, I may not be trans, but there is a trans person that I know and connect to, and how can I help champion a better tomorrow for them.
Yeah,
That's
100%.
what the whole show is essentially about. It wasn't even initially created to be about trans lives, in particular black trans lives, but it just turned into that, as that's where culture was moving. And there was this enormous groundswell of fear, from a political angle, that we just really wanted to really just show that trans people are just people,
Mhm.
and there's nothing to fear, and there's no one's out to get you. We all just want love and human connection, and maybe a job would be good. Yeah.
Yeah, just, the basic human
Yeah.
needs.
Healthcare. Yeah.
Yeah. So where did the idea come from? Like, you've now done 4 seasons, and where did the
Yes.
initial spark come from to get this show up and running?
Um, well, it was, I'll fast forward a little from where we left off in Toronto. I ended up moving to New York. I did some fantastic advertising work in New York. With the interracial Cheerios commercial that was, a reflection of of the culture I grew up in. I actually was raised by a black man. You wouldn't know because it was my stepfather, but I was really instilled within me the civil rights movement from a young child, and I just knew, and I could see the parallels of obviously trans rights and queer rights and
Hmm.
gay rights, and that importance of not just championing myself, but all of us, all the
Yeah.
minorities that in minority groups. And I remember getting the job at General Mills or to work on General Mills, and I was like, I don't know what I can do with this. I don't really make baby commercials, and I don't know how to do this. Mom, I'm not a mom. I don't feed Cheerios to children. It's just like for me, I was like, I don't
Yeah.
know but we were able to, again, Cheerios is pop culture,
Yeah.
and it was at a time in 2013 when we were starting to see the reflection of our society, and not only just in film and television but in commercials. And that was that small choice of just casting an interracial family turned out to be very, I mean, I called my mother after and I said, I think we did something really really special, and I can't wait for you to see it. And I had no idea it was going to be an extreme controversy. And it was, I think, the very beginning of the hate comments online, in
Mm.
particular YouTube comments. And the brand, had a choice to remove the commercial, but instead just disabled the comments, and which I think maybe that's a good idea all around. Just disable the comments, and we might be a little bit in a better place. But nonetheless,
Yeah.
that was important only because that campaign was immensely shared, if not online. In particular, a lot of people saw the importance of it, and
Yeah.
and then so we followed up with a Super Bowl commercial, which was kind of a cool life experience to make a Super Bowl commercial. But we brought that family back and told yet another story, which ended up being number two, I think, in the Super Bowl commercials of that year. And it was a huge success to really convince a giant corporation that has deep pockets and all these investors
Hmm.
always ringing their doorbell, but we convinced them to do the right thing, and they stood behind it, and they stood behind the work. And I think it created a movement of a lot of big brands actually thinking, well, can we, with some of this greed and money, can we do something good with it from time to time and actually give us a little positive impression on our brand? And I think that's when we started to see a lot of brands participating and doing kind gestures. We all know there's greed behind it all, but there was just a little kind gesture to maybe take a little bit of Robin Hood, take a little bit from the rich and give to the poor, give to a cause that that means something. And then that has now evolved into woke culture and
Hmm.
turned into a negative thing. I was just tired of winter, to be honest. And my best friend lived in LA, and she managed to convince me to give it a try. And so I came over to the West Coast, and it turns out that advertising really is made in the West Coast, but it's not. I mean, the creative culture here is good, is not as great as it was in New York. I really just felt like I was a part of something in New York. And LA is a little more isolating because
Hmm.
you can't really just walk down the street and run into all your friends. You have to get in a car. And then you end up getting, maybe you can afford a house, but when you're in a house, you're just sitting in your house. You're not getting that. You don't want to leave your house, so you can't always afford to leave your house.
Hmm.
So um, I came here. I was single, and I met my partner Stephen Warren, who we've been together almost 9 years,
Hmm.
going on 9 years. And he works in entertainment, and that seemed to be the thing here. And to be around the entertainment world was fascinating for me because, again, that sort of pop culture excitement. I got to sort of step into some rooms and with some people, some very famous folks that
Totally.
I wouldn't have been able to step in without him. And but it was just, I already had like my brain. I have a million ideas running through my head all any given time. I have like my notes are just books are filled with just thoughts and ideas. And he is, yes, a lawyer, however, a very creative lawyer. And in some ways I wasn't able to connect in Los Angeles with like a real strong creative partner typically that you have in advertising. And I
Hmm.
kind of started to turn him into to my creative partner.
I
And
love that.
no, it was great, and we are, it's wonderful. He's wonderfully creative, and has a lot of experience, and is a huge advocate. Like I said, was on co-chair
Mhm.
of GLAD, represents a laundry list of some of the most talented people in Hollywood. It's very inspiring. But we were, it's actually a funny story. We were in Puerto Vallarta for New Year's,
Mhm.
and it was just the worst weather you could imagine. It was just the beginning of the presidency of the guy I won't even mention. And it
Mhm.
was a first term, and feeling a little like, what can we do to help? I feel like
Right.
there's just a real sudden negative entity that is pushing everybody down. So what can we do to help? And Stephen actually represents Ross Matthews
Love.
from RuPaul's Drag Race, and we were walking with Ross, and Ross, I have to say, like Ross in Puerto Vallarta was so fun because you cannot take two steps without somebody being like, "Oh my God,
Yes,
Ross
I can
Matthews!"
only
Can I?
imagine.
And so it was really fun being with Ross, and we had a really really wonderful dinner with Ross. This was at a time I think he was just doing RuPaul's Drag Race, and was sort of trying to figure out like what more can I do for my career. And we were just sitting at dinner, and I'm like, oh, you asked me a question. I want to solve your problem. What can we do with your career? What can we do with your
Yeah.
career? So we go back to our hotel room. It's like raining. It's terrible weather, and we're trying to figure out what's next for Ross Matthews. And we're watching RuPaul's Drag Race All Stars, and we're just like, I love drag culture. I actually worked in a lot of drag bars. In particular, what I thought was so helpful about this community was I was struggling to connect with my family in a way that I could actually talk more openly about my life
Right.
and about my queerness. Also, it was on me, not just necessarily. I was projecting a lot of my insecurities onto my family as well, as I was unwilling to have certain conversations, and because I was afraid of what those conversations would be like. And but there's one thing that can break down all those barriers is going and taking your family to a drag show, and it's just, I don't know, for some reason it's just is so entertaining and so fun and so absurd that it just takes everyone's barriers down. And next thing you know, you're just talking about all the things that you never knew you want to talk about after the show. And it's just that to me, I was like, there's some catalyst here. There's something really special here, a magical connection. What if we took this new like celebrity entity drag queen, which is a new thing, and
Mhm.
we put it to work on the ground and took this celebrity coastal experience into small towns, which yes, RuPaul was already doing on televisions, but not
Not in
physically
this
the way it
way.
was. Yeah, it was like the girls are already doing it. The drag community is already in some way starting to tour, and and seeing at the time seeing them actually go to some of these smaller towns. But what if we went to like the smallest of towns,
Mhm.
and what would happen? And this could be great. What if Ross Matthews hosts? It could be really interesting. So we pitch it to Ross Matthews, and Ross is like, yeah, well, yeah. So,
Uh-huh.
so we're like, oh, I guess okay. Well, now I really like this idea, but it didn't seem right for Ross at the time, and but we were like, well, I don't know. Let's think about it a little bit more. And that was sort of, I don't know. I sort of like in and out. Idea one idea, and I don't know where it's going to go. And like I said, we're very lucky to be very well connected in Hollywood, and one of our dear friends is Casey Blois, who's the head of HBO.
Mhm.
And so, this is a very simple idea. And Stephen was just having a cocktail with him at a restaurant. I believe it was a Sunset Tower, in very Hollywood. And, just having some regular drinks, talking about business and stuff. And I think he just, not even intentionally, just light pitched him, this idea we had come up with, in Puerto Vallarta. And he's just
Mhm.
like, we've been looking for something like this. I love it. I want you to now go pitch our head of unscripted, Nina Rosenstein, at HBO in New York. And so I get a call from Stevens. I was like, what? This sounds insane. Pitch. Okay. Well, I mean, I've done a lot of pitches in advertising, pitching new
Mhm.
business. So I know how to do a good pitch. I didn't never pitched a show before, but I was like, with a little research, next thing you know, I've got a pitch deck together and we're on a plane flying to New York City. It was actually an interesting day because Nina, who's now one of our very, very dear friends, she came in, she had broken her knee on the ice skating in Rockefeller Center. So she came in from New Jersey on her day off in a giant knee brace. She could barely walk. Came in, literally propped her leg up on the floor on the table. And I'm just we have our pitch deck, we have our sizzle, and then next thing you know, we're just she's just has poker face. Like she's been doing this. She's one of the most. She's really head of all of unscripted and all the comedy specials and HBO. She's been doing this for forever,
Hmm.
um, and she's incredibly talented at it. So you're not getting a glimmer of hope in her eye. Um, um, and at the end, after we shared it, she was just like, "I love it. I want it," and I was just like, I was not expecting to hear that. I was just sort of thought this would just be like a really cool story, and you'll be able to share it one day. Like you get to
Hmm.
pitch to HBO one day, and the next thing you know, we like literally like I was like one of the happiest days of my life because it was just such a fun, validating that not only are we pitching a story about queer life and pop
Hmm.
culture, but to like the biggest,
Yeah.
most create authentic brand that funds work that I truly love and believe in.
Hmm.
And if any place is going to make it, it's going to be HBO. And that was the beginning of a wonderful, partnership with not only HBO, but with Nina, with Casey, and everyone celebrating it and, going through the process of bringing on an amazing production company. Really taught us a lot about making long format television, which I had never done, but I really do know how to tell stories and collaborate with a lot of different amazing, talented artist. And I think that's just what we did. We did pitch the show with the original cast, and that they all said yes. And next thing you know, we're shooting a pilot. So we had to do the pilot. I left that part out. So there was a part that once you get, I love it, I want it, and then there's like, well, you gotta
Yeah.
do this. Well, pilot. So you got to, and that's one thing that HBO often does differently because Netflix is over here at the time ordering straight to series, straight to series, straight to series. The practice of pilots was starting to be like, well, just in the sake of Netflix trying to get ahead, they were just scrapping that whole idea. But HBO is still very much make the pilot. For example, Game of Thrones first episode, they discarded the whole pilot, but they decided to redo it. They really felt invested in the story and the creativity, and so they redid the pilot. We went to Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, with our amazing showrunner and our cast, and I have to say, it was such a wonderful experience. And that first drag show that we pulled together, it was so hot. It was like the sweatiest, hottest room in the summer, but that room was alive. And it was
Mm.
that, I don't know if there's ever a time when you made something or you created something, and I've been lucky enough to have this happen. And I know when it's right. And I usually will cry because it's such an emotional moment for me. I tear up, and then when we were able to put it together and create that pilot episode, and we watched it for the first time, it was clear we'd done something really special. And obviously it took a huge amount of talented people to do it, but it was just so wonderful. I mean, I'm so
Mhm.
lucky to have been able to do that, and with such amazing people, and not only to create an emotional story, but to be able to do it again and again and again, and hopefully inspire, educate, and make someone see themselves for the first time. That's how it all happened. And then the whole political climate changed while we're making this thing. COVID happened literally right in the middle of
Yeah.
filming, and that for me was like, wow, all of this amazing work and energy to finally be here and to watch it all and to stand in front of my entire crew and tell them that we all had to fly home because this is something out of our control, and we
Mhm.
want to protect you, and we don't know how to make this show without being in the real world. And that last episode of our first season, we filmed. Not only are you creating a show for the first time, but the last episode was created all of via interviews on Zooms and social distancing, and we created
Yeah.
the entire episode like this,
Yeah.
and we were nominated for an Emmy.
Amazing.
So yeah, it's wild. Yeah.
The through line that I am getting from what listening to you talk about your career, it's the narratives thing. That is the through line of how do we tell a story that isn't, even if we're not necessarily going for impact, is impactful through the way that it is told. And looking at, having seen the show, for me, I was just like, it was COVID. I had tuned into it. I'd heard about this new show. I really emotionally connected with the stories that were being told. I'm not a drag queen. I'm not a trans person, but as a
Yeah.
queer person, there are connections of how we live our lives. And I remember telling Dan Snow, who you know,
Yes. Yes.
and I was like, "Hey, this show, like I remember watching it at his place. We had watched it together.
Mhm.
And then that was the what got him to reach out to Aquila, and therefore, and then that whole storyline, which is why we're here today. And all because I had seen this show and was like, this is great television, just the way that it was shown. And it's something like you said, where it's reality TV, but it's not trash. It's something that is actually compelling and is something that, I'm like, to me, I'm watching it. I'm like, this is like, oh my God, we have so far to go, but also we've progressed so much as well. All this to say,
Well,
like,
I mean that was by design. Like it's a very layered show. It's not technically reality, although it's reality stars in the real world. So there's like this
right.
alter ego, real world, Pee Wee Herman. Like there's all these like inspired pieces to this,
Hmm.
but it's a docu series technically,
Hmm.
and but I was like, I don't care what you call us, just watch us. And
Yeah.
then and I used to have a phrase, say the phrase, I'm just a G and a BLT. I didn't really understand what it was like to be a lesbian or a trans person, but how do you know how do we connect as a community?
Yeah.
What makes us, it's not just pride that one month or day of the year, however you celebrate, that we all come together, or but drag does generally bring us all together. So throughout the year, I mean,
Mhm.
you go to a drag show, everybody's there. It's like going to a Dolly Parton concert, everybody's there.
Yeah.
All kinds of folks, and it's just that thing that just brings down all those walls, and it's celebratory and wonderful, and it's not a familial thing. It's then just showing the community, hey, when we show up for each other,
Mhm.
we got your back.
Oh, 100%. So I lived in Toronto for about 10 years, and near the village, like you're going to drag shows, like that was like just the staple of nightlife for me. I loved it. And so having lived, because I moved back to my hometown, so I live in Windsor, Ontario. I'm just like right on the border of Detroit, if
Uh-huh.
for any.
Yes, I've driven through there when I came from Chicago to. There's the bridge there, right?
Yes.
You
Yeah.
notice,
Yeah.
yeah, and the train. Does the train go through Windsor?
It does.
It
Yeah.
did. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
S-
Sat on that train, to get across the border many times.
Very exciting. Ooh. So living here, like there's not like a bustling queer nightlife. Like that energy is not necessarily here in Windsor. But I
Mm.
will say, so I like I told you, I just got back from Thailand. So Tyler and I, we went out every night.
Yeah,
So you said you'd been to Bangkok. Like, did you go to like Stranger Bar and
I remember the name, but I definitely, well, I have wild sort of. Yes, I went to the gay district, I guess we
Mhm.
call. There was actually first time I went there, the military shut the whole neighborhood down, and they were doing drug testing, which no
Oh
one wants to
shoot.
get caught in Thailand on
No.
drugs. Obviously, we weren't on drugs, but the whole street they just shut down, locked down, and they, in order to leave, you had to pee in a cup and be drug tested. It was wild.
That's wild.
Wild.
Okay,
And then
I
the
did
second
not deal
time,
with
yeah, I
that.
didn't. Yeah, no, it was. I have it documented, some photos somewhere, but it was.
Of which
I
part?
was all of it, all of it. I was like, this is crazy. What if I die? So I wanted to make sure. But no, it was. It was fine. Thailand is awesome, but unbelievably like.
Awesome.
I just like that you really truly feel like a fish out of water. But it's a very
Mhm.
welcoming place.
100%. I said, because I spent a lot of time in the like Koh Chang, like the island, so very that energy. But
Uh-huh.
then
Yeah,
going to Bangkok, I was like, I feel like I'm in a video game. Like
yeah.
it's just so hyper, like over the top. So much energy. But the reason I bring it up is going to the drag show, we went to Stranger Bar, and a lot of the Drag Race Thailand girls
Oh,
are
right,
like
right. I haven't been
residents.
recently, so maybe that's a new thing. But how awesome!
They were some of the most talented queens I've
Oh yeah,
ever seen in my life. They are acrobatic, choreo, lip syncing, the looks. Like it was something where it brought me back to what, like I said before, that energy of being 20 something in Toronto, like going to drag bars for the first time and just being in that energy. And I'm jaded. Like I'm almost 40, and to be back and then feel that excitement again, I was like, yes, like it was so, I don't know, it brought me back to like early days Geo, and what it was like to be a queer person, like kind of like starting that part of my life. Kudos to those girls. Like if like I just loved it. It was amazing.
yeah. I haven't, like I said, I haven't been in many years, and it was before the drag race culture had an impact on. But I'd love to see that.
So how long has it been now since we're here?
So it was actually just it was about a year ago we got our last award for the show, which was amazing. We were just so celebrated, and it's not just when you create the show; it's the awards season. It's a whole like thing where
Yeah.
you go, you pre-production, then you're in production, then you're post-production, and then your awards. It's just like a lot of that's the joy and the excitement and the a real amazing life experience of being a part of a brand like HBO and giving you permission to do what you've always wanted to do.
Hmm.
Literally very few notes. That was also at the time when we were sort of uncertain about the political future.
Yeah.
We sort of ended the season on a sort of a question mark. So we didn't end the series, but we did end the season. And now I think we're just letting things play out in the real world. And
Yeah.
who knows what's going to happen in the future. I definitely don't think we've closed the door on the series, but I think it needs some rest
Hmm.
because it's a little dangerous, in particular, for everyone involved. And I don't think that it's obviously important for us to protect our crew and cast
Yeah.
members, and Hollywood and advertising and all these industries are going through a big upheaval.
Hmm.
And we were not renewed for season five. But again, like I said, we have really great close relationships, and I think if anything, timing is everything. And I think it is an important time to just sort of rest.
Yeah.
We did it for 5 years. I got a lot. I have like a completely gray beard now, and my hair, if it was short, it looks very gray. So I think it's going to take some time, reflect, and transform into what's next. And I was thinking a lot about really is what's next, and that question is I hate it. And I've
Hmm.
had a lot of success in all the different industries I've been lucky enough to contribute to and work in, and collaborate with so many amazing artists. To get back into the grind and to just to make money didn't seem the the right thing for me. As like I said, we're very nicely compensated for the show, and so I've had some time to not have to push myself for the survival tactics in the past of just being a part of things and working and making money, and
Hmm.
um, for the sake of surviving, and obviously in putting my creative life experience into those moments. But I think I really have been thinking a lot about, again, is I don't want to just make things to to become popular. I
Yeah.
want to make meaningful things and I think that the next thing is for me, is giving myself permission to be the artist that I've always wanted to be. And I think
Hmm.
you have to give yourself permission to do that. And I didn't know how to do that, and I've finally been able to do some research, and I think that's the side of me that I know that makes me the most happy and I have control of. And it also is in some ways a 180 from what I was doing before,
Yeah.
but also not, because I'm able to green light my own work, make my own life, tell my own life story, and human experience that I hope to connect that connects others. And I have to say, I've never been happier.
You're saying like this is the happiest you've been. You're really digging into your own creative pathways for you, but at the same time, on the flip side, like as a creative myself, I'm like that can sometimes be the most daunting when you're pitching, when you're trying to find work. It's a bit more, it's a bit easier in my mind because I'm like I am looking to get approval from external sources
Mhm.
to allow me to move forward in my career. Like I'm at a stage where I'm trying to get more clients. I'm trying to get more work because I'm in a place where I do need to hustle because of like, I need to pay my
S-
bills, keep the lights on, right?
Survival. So I've
Yeah.
been surviving for, you know, 46 years.
Yeah. And so but on the flip side, where now that you're having that space to explore your own kind of like we said, go back to basics. Um how do you find that space and being in that space? Because for me, the one thing that has always been daunting is creating space for myself with that is a bit more creative and it doesn't have like a brief or some sort of a guideline around how to create.
Yeah.
And so what is it for you that like how do you approach that in your own in when you're
Y-
creating?
Well, have you ever listened to the podcast, the telepathy tapes?
No.
Oh my god, you should. It's like, I think it's amazing.
Okay.
It's life changing. But it's very it sounds wild, but just a slight left turn here because I'll link it back. But
You're good.
it's an
Please go
amazing
ahead.
podcast. I think it's fairly it really is about connecting. Well, initially is the entry point is it's like a documentary podcast series, where actually a documentarian couldn't sell this as an actual documentary initially, so she developed the podcast version of it, and initially starts with these nonverbal autistic kids who have been told their parents have been told their entire lives they have no voice, there's nothing inside there,
Mm,
and they've been given a means to speak, and it's called spelling. And then there's this fascinating thing that they learn through this process is that their caretakers are they can read the minds of their caretakers, and they start to test this telepathy in particular of, oh well, people are communicating without, from and communicating with their caretakers without speaking. So these nonverbal autistic kids have this amazing ability to do that. But what it really starts to uncover is consciousness, and in particular, as a creative person, very much believe that we're all connected to something more than just,
100%.
this physical world. But it starts to prove, or tries to begin to prove, that is physics really what is resting up this physical world, or is it consciousness the thing that wraps it all?
Hmm.
And then it goes really deeply into not just creativity, but clairvoyance, to mediums, to naturopathy, to all kinds of spiritual connections, afterlife. It connects it all in this fascinating world. So I listened to this podcast, but it was a moment that just really that it asked the question: if there was no money, if there was nothing, that you felt that you had to do, to survive, what would you do? What is
Hmm.
your human purpose on the planet? And it just clicked. I was like, I'm an artist. I'm always like
Yeah.
that. I'm a fine. I've always wanted to do it. I connected the dots quickly. I was like, I needed to survive, so I did all these things, and now I'm surviving. I'm doing really good. So I've checked that box now, and now I can just be. And I think I want to take that idea, and not different than having a creative brief. You have to create your own brief, but in order to
Yeah.
do that, you have to really dive deep inside yourself, and you have to sort of look at all the things that inspire you, the color, from colors to artistic styles to artists, and what you could be anything, and you just kind of put your own new thing together and hope it and then yeah, hope it connects. And I get that's what I'm in the process of doing. It is daunting, of course, and
Hmm.
I've been working in all different types of ways, but I have to say it's satisfying when I actually see what I'm capable of doing, when in my head was telling me I'm not capable, but that's not true. You are capable. You just have to sit down and do it. But I mean, and to answer your question, I think in order to, you have to create your own brief,
Yeah.
if that makes sense. You have to kind of go and find what is it that you want to accomplish, and it doesn't even have to mean anything. That's the great part about fine art. It doesn't have to mean anything.
Hmm.
There's so many artists that are painting the most ridiculous things. You can just paint from a place of queer joy. You can create from a place of fear, or whatever it is, the thing that makes you happy or comes from a place of love. I think that's the one thing I have learned in creating art, is it has to really come from here, because otherwise
Yeah.
I get bored and I don't want to do
Yeah.
it. It's like, oh, I gotta paint this barn, I don't want to paint that. you know I just want to,
100%.
yeah, I want to paint things that I love, and I want to bring people together, or to
Hmm.
share something that makes people see something that I don't even see in it.
Yeah.
I think that's taking, the narrative and sharing it with someone else, and they take it and do something else, with it, is that's what makes me so happy. I mean, I'm very lucky and very grateful, and I know I definitely have a lot of privileges, and have been able to be and still be in rooms with the people that are making some of the most incredible art in the world. And I think it's daunting too to compare yourself to that, and I try to be very careful not to do it too much.
Yeah.
I also have I've had a lot of life experience now. Again, I think I feel I've reached, there's this like cliff. I think they say it happens at 44. I think it actually happened at 46 for me. I feel it, but I definitely think that I spent half my life surviving, and I want to spend the next half of my life, thriving and doing things that make me happy.
Hmm. Were you painting at all during the, let's say, busier times of your life, when we're talking through like agency life? And no, yeah.
No, I wi- I a lot of, there was a bit of resentment. And I have to go through the process. I think I
Hmm.
was resentful of. I was like, oh, those artists that had rich parents, send them to art school. They could just be painters. I was kind of, I had that negative voice inside me that was
Mm,
just, I needed to. You have to get rid of that. And
100%.
it takes time, therapy, whatever it is you do to to keep yourself or pursuing your goals and dreams. You have to lose it. And I have put little post-it notes on things that you have to just give yourself permission, that you have permission to do this, and you deserve it. You're going to be it's going to be great. And I think the most fulfilling part is, I don't care what anybody else thinks.
Hmm.
It's just, I'm doing it for myself, and when
Yeah.
I see the results, I'm always shocked what comes out of me.
With that said, because I once again, similar storyline where I haven't really been nurturing that side of myself. It's been something
Mhm.
that has been kind of on the back burner, and now that I'm entering this new phase of like, I really want to like kick up the business, like my work, but I'm also realizing that it has to go hand in hand with me carving out space for that other half of myself, that is the reason that the other half exists, if that makes sense. And so, taking space from that, I'm realizing that wasn't necessary. It was part of my story, but it was important for me to be able to come back to. And so for
Mhm.
you, like, what do you think happens like when, as creatives, we kind of like ignore the thing that got us where we are to begin with?
Well, and I think that's coming from a negative point of view of ignoring, and I don't think it's true. I don't think you actually are ignoring it. I mean, if whether you're designing is creative, when you're conceptual working, you're trying to come up with a new design or aesthetic or whatever it is, you're problem solving. So those are
100%.
all things that you still use in creation. When you're drawing or sketching or thumbnailing, all that stuff is the same process of creating. And just because I didn't physically practice, drawing, doesn't mean that I'm not learning craft and color theory, and or how to make an impactful visual for someone else.
Hmm.
The thing you have to change is, instead of your point of view being for this brand, or your point of view being for this network, it's for yourself. So
Yeah.
I literally took my creative brain, which again is always running, always thinking of ideas, always just I write everything down, and I just what I would normally do to try to solve a problem, I would just I put it out to the universe, which is again bringing into this like world of where do ideas come from. I truly believe they come from the universe, and I propose a
Hmm.
question, and I get the answer. It's not always, sometimes it's not always the most brilliant answer, but sometimes it is.
Yeah.
And so then I just now have been focusing and shifting the narrative towards my own personal narratives and things that I believe in and want to share. Not that We're Here wasn't that, not that there's still some of myself in that Cheerios commercial. There's some of myself
Hmm.
in that AIDS Committee of Toronto deck of cards. There's stories that we wrote. I got produced to sell fiber bars. It's like stupid things that at the time were tools that somebody else gave me money to, to sell their product. Now I am the product, if that
Yeah.
makes sense. But I don't, and in that product, I don't care, as much about selling as much as I just want to connect. And I think you set your own brief, you figure out what your own set of rules are, what your own personal design aesthetic, and if those things will just continue to keep rising to the top, and you just do the work. I have a wall here. I'm not going to share it with you yet, but I have a wall here of all my paintings, and I have inspiration on another wall, and I just put it together, and until it becomes a narrative that makes sense to have a show. And like I said, hopefully we'll have that in a year or so. I don't know. I just throw out a year, hopefully sooner. But
It's good to
um,
say that though. Like, just give yourself that, like,
you need a deadline, otherwise,
yeah,
artists love to sit around and think.
too much thinking. I gotta. So, like, what are you working on right now for the show? Like, can you talk about it a little bit?
Yeah, no, I mean, well, I'm developing, in particular, what do I want to paint, and I think I
Hmm.
had to figure that out. And I love people and figurative sort of narratives. In particular, you kind of need that if you're coming from a queer space, because typically, um, um, I think most of our stories revolves and is around people. But I mean,
Yeah.
how you tell that story, and if you think about it, almost like cinematically, because I have a film background and I do love film. I want to bring elements of the cinematic memory into my work. I also I love photography, and I took a lot of the photos on set. Actually, the first poster for We're Here, I did the photo of that, and that was on a giant billboard inside of
Like
a building.
the
But
iconic one, the
yeah,
big. That's
yeah,
amazing.
so I love photography. I've always taken photos. I think it's just become so, with the iPhone and stuff, it's been hard to, you know,
Yeah.
monetize that as a career if you're not already kind of like a superstar
Hmm.
name for yourself. And I love photography, but again, I think it took almost half my life to really realize that I actually really just love the. Um, I love painting. I love the process. I love how much control you have. I really am trying to loosen up in particular, not because I have this detail design mind where everything is like, and I can't do this anymore. I have to be very loose because I got tendonitis in my arm. I had to work through that, and
Okay.
decide, oh, am I too old to paint? But no, you just have
No.
to. You're going to run into some hurdles, and right now I have probably about 17 or 18 pieces that I've done. Some are from photos that I've taken or inspired by photos, but I've been really loosening up the narratives a bit. And in this sort of right now, I'm in this hybrid space of figurative expressionism.
Okay.
So hopefully soon you'll see what that looks like. On my Instagram, for example, I did do a portrait of my partner, Steven, which is a
Yes.
very realist um, you know, portrait, and I felt like I needed to do that for some reason. It's like obviously I love my partner, so I was able to put a lot of love into it. But it also is kind of like, here's my barn. Okay, cool. I got this. Now I want to do this.
Yeah. But sometimes you gotta
Y'all
just
see,
get one of those,
yeah,
like, get it out, and then you kinda get into a
yeah.
flow, right?
Well, I mean, I had to learn like oil. I taught myself oil painting. In
Mhm.
particular, it's not the safest, so I found the safest way possible to keep my studio clean of things that could, give you cancer.
Yeah.
So I've really tried to, those are a lot. There's a lot of things you have to learn about just almost like the chemistry of it. But what I found that I love so much is I love cooking as well, but I love um, making my own paint. And so I've figured out the process of making your own pigments, and that's been so fun.
What are you
Because
using?
just right now, what's it? I have a little, I have it right here. I just been getting
I
like
love a show and
just a
tell.
little, you just get dry pigment. And this is, order it online. You have to get a mask on. You can't mix it if you can't breathe it in because some of it has toxic metals in. But I do it.
Okay.
And right now, I've been working in this process. It's called distemper. And there's two ways you can do it. One with like an old school way with rabbit skin glue, which you have to melt, and then it's like really complicated. It dries really fast, but it has this beautiful matte finish at the end.
Mm.
That like if you put it in a room, it just literally takes your breath away. And so I'm kind of really fascinated with this process. But I have the rabbit skin version, which is a little more time consuming, but there's a PVA, like an Elmer's school glue version that actually I think looks, really great as well. It's a little faster to do. So right now I'm experimenting with that and oils. And because the distemper dries so quickly, you, and it doesn't layer as easily as oils. It's sort of,
Hmm.
you have a little bit, your playground is a little smaller. So then you have, which is great whenever you're like, okay, I have this set of rules and I can't really, I'm in this tiny box of what I can paint with this particular process. So that I like that because I then can focus on the narrative or something else and not have to worry about, because when you're painting with oils, literally the sky's the limit.
Yes.
And it can be daunting. So that's literally where I'm at. I'm also working on taking drawing classes, so I'm really connecting back to all my drawing skills, and that's where I got a little bit of the tendonitis. But I've really learned how to sit up properly and
Hmm.
to draw. I want to learn to draw from memory, so really all that is repetition and just sitting. And it's like, you decide your narrative and you study it till the end of time, and hopefully it's a masterpiece by the
I'm
end.
pumped to see this.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
I gotta get your number after this because I would love to like just talk shop
yeah,
outside of this because
yeah.
what you're exploring right now is literally where my mind is at of what I want to start doing for myself. I also want to send you the paintings that I worked on in Thailand just to be like,
Oh
this is
yeah.
what just I just banged out in like 2 days.
No, exactly. So
Yeah.
you surprise yourself. I mean, it's just like just sitting down and practicing. I think there's some times
Yes.
like recently I've had some like, like some family things and some holidays and then traveling, and I haven't been practicing every day and holiday stuff. And I get a little depressed because
Hmm.
I need, like, I absolutely need to do this. I have to do it to be happy.
I love that honestly. In a time where if everything's overshared, you're listening to yourself, and that is exactly what you need to be doing. I respect it 100%.
There's a lot of uncertainty in the world, but the one thing I know for sure that I can do until I'm 100 is paint. So
Hmm. That is the perfect
mm,
bow to wrap around this conversation. I can't believe it's been an hour and a half, by the way. It feels
I
like this has been
know,
like,
I know.
like
It's like
15 minutes. Every guest that I talk to, I always want to end the interview in the same way. I love to talk about people like what it is that drives them and ideas around what their personal brands are, et cetera, in the world. So, in your own words, what would you say is the most on brand thing about you?
um, I knew this was coming, and then you asked it, and I was like, wait, I'm second guessing. And I mean, the thread, an on brand thing about me that even, I mean, we even included it in one of as literal campaign line for Cheerios is love. I
Mm,
think that's the central thing that you will find in anything I ever do is I put my heart into it. Um, and, and that's why I've been able, I think, to connect to people like yourself, and connect to my creative colleagues, and to create things that not only make others feel love,
mhm.
um, but it's something that I put a lot of love in. And I think that love and sometimes can be controversial, but it really is just human, one human to another. And I've always been putting myself into my work, and that love into the work is really what makes, I think, a difference between something that is okay and something that really connects to other humans. So love, period.
I love the fact that we've been able to have this conversation and connect in this way. I think that you are exactly where you need to be. The fact that you've been able to take so many life experiences and now you are able to just, I don't know, like reinterpret what it is to be human through this revisitation of the early days of your creative career, let's say, or creative self, I think is really impactful. I think it's something that a lot of people can get something out of, because we all have that like return to home moment. And it happens at different times in our lives. And like I said, like I really relate to a lot of what you're saying. And so I just want to thank you for taking the time to be part of the podcast. Like it really means a lot to me to be able to talk to you in this format. And I don't know, I'm just like I feel very like positively emotional in this moment of just like, wow, like somebody wanted to take time out of their day to talk to me, who is someone who I see as like a major person out in the world, you know?
Oh, well, thank you for having me. I've been hiding, so to speak, for a little while to be able to share where I'm at, and you know, in some ways, a pivot in what
Mhm.
some people would think would be my potential journey, but I think it can help inspire someone else. I'm always more than happy to do it. I don't really think of myself in the way that maybe you have set me up, but I appreciate you saying and sharing those kind words, and that amazing how you said all that stuff in the beginning. It made me feel like, oh, right, yes, I did do something. I feel pretty good about that. So
Yeah, you
even
should.
in all of this, the darkness, there's love will prevail.
100%. That's why we're here today. It's that connection, right? That piece is very important. And anyway, I thank you so
Yes.
much for
Thank
doing
you.
this.
Yes, of course. I can't wait to see your art.
Thank you.
Keep
Yeah.
painting.
Okay, yes. And so to anyone listening, where can they find you online if that's something that you care to put out there? I know you said you're kind of like over socials, but
No, I mean, I still will share. I mean, sort of, I'm just like I said, I'm not sharing my personal art
Mhm.
online, but I do share photography and things on my Instagram. It's at Johnny, JOHNNIE. Instagram, as my last name was Ingram. It was fun play on words back in the day. And
Mhm.
that's generally the only place I will post anything. So that's a one stop shop
Mhm.
for now.
Love
For
it.
now.
And to anyone listening, follow the podcast. I'm on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all of the streaming services. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll talk soon.
Yep. Thank you.